I never meant to be the kind of woman who waits for her best friend's boyfriend to glance a second too long. But the truth. I noticed him before she ever introduced him. Zayn had this careless kind of charm shirt, always slightly wrinkled like he just got out of bed, that scruff he barely maintained, and the kind of grin that made you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. He was too much of everything, and Kara, my friend, never seemed to notice how magnetic he was. Or maybe she did and just assumed the world was safe around her. The night she introduced him, she laughed and said, "This is Zayn. He's not as dumb as he looks, I swear." Zayn had winked. "Depends on the day." Smiled. I shouldn't have. But I did. From then on, it became a pattern. She brought him around casually. Movie nights, dinners, group hikes. And I kept pretending not to notice how close he stood. How he'd let his hand linger on my lower back when brushing past. How sometimes I'd look up and catch him already looking. But I never crossed the line. Not even close. I had someone too, technically. An on-again, off-again guy named Evan who couldn't hold a plan for longer than a weekend. Still, it wasn't about Evan. It was about something in me that stirred whenever Zayn entered a room. A kind of silent dare. The one you pretend you don't hear. When Kara planned the party, it seemed innocent. A cozy backyard thing with drinks, music, and a handful of people. "Lena, stay the night," she'd said. "You always leave early." I agreed, mostly because I didn't want to go home to an empty apartment and Evan's unread messages. It was the kind of summer night that felt too warm to end. Kara drank fast and early, as she always did. She vanished upstairs with a couple of her cousins by midnight, muttering something about needing to lie down. Zayn and I stayed near the fire pit while the others slowly trickled out. I sipped something sugary, half listening to him talk about work, but mostly just watching the light flicker off his face. "She's been distant lately," he said, eyes focused on the glowing coals. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself." He nodded. "Maybe she doesn't know how to say what she's feeling." He glanced at me. "And you do?" "Sometimes," I answered. We didn't say much after that. Just stared ahead, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. His hand was close to mine. Closer than it should have been. I didn't pull away. I don't remember who leaned in first. Maybe we both did. But before anything happened, Kara's voice rang out from the hallway window upstairs. "Zayn, come up here, I need you." He didn't move right away. He looked at me, really looked, and said nothing. Then he stood and brushed invisible lint from his jeans, like nothing had just almost happened. "I'll see you in the morning," he said. Barely slept. The guest room felt too quiet, the sheets too crisp. Every creak in the hallway made me flinch, expecting his shadow at the door. But nothing came. No knock. No whispered apology or drunken confession. Just silence. At breakfast, Kara was chipper and hungover. Zayn avoided eye contact. I pretended everything was normal, but inside I wasn't sure what I wanted more. For him to touch me or for this ache to go away. But what stayed with me wasn't the firelight, or the almost kiss. It was the way he looked at me when she called him. Like he was choosing. Like he didn't want to. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was desperate to feel something other than boredom and the quiet fear that I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. But as I stirred sugar into my coffee and listened to Kara ramble about dreamless sleep and missing socks, all I could think about was his hand almost touching mine. The silence between us. And the way he didn't say goodbye. Should have ended there. That would have been the smart thing. The right thing. But I already knew I was going to see him again. And worse, I knew that if he leaned in again, I wouldn't stop him. The kitchen was still quiet when I stepped in the next morning. The house carried that heavy stillness that follows a long night. Half-drunken conversations and unspoken mistakes. Kara was still asleep upstairs, and I figured Zayn had either left early or was avoiding me. Either would have been fine. But then I heard footsteps, slow and measured. He appeared from the hallway, shirtless, rubbing a towel over his damp hair. His eyes flicked to mine, then stayed there a little too long. "Morning," he said, voice rough and low. "Morning," I replied, keeping my eyes on the mug I was holding. Coffee never needed this much focus. He walked over, opened the fridge like he'd done it 100 times, like this was his place. He pulled out a juice bottle, took a swig straight from it, and leaned on the counter near me. "Kara still asleep?" he asked. "Yeah." We stood there, just breathing the same air, pretending we didn't both remember that near kiss by the fire. I hated the silence more than I should have. I wanted him to say something reckless. I wanted to slap myself for wanting that. "She's lucky to have a friend like you," he said suddenly. I gave him a sharp look. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" He laughed, low and genuine. "No, I just meant, you've always been solid. Real. Unlike you." I asked, the words sharper than I meant. He didn't answer at first. Then he walked closer. "You didn't pull away last night." My breath caught. I held the mug tighter like it could anchor me. "Neither did you." He took it from my hands, set it on the counter, and before I could stop myself we were kissing. There was no music, no soft build-up. Just heat, frustration, guilt, desire, all colliding in one sharp, stolen moment. Broke it. "This is wrong." "I know," he whispered, but he didn't step back. "That's why it feels like this." I told myself to walk away. I didn't. Instead, we stumbled into the guest room, the one with the 2 white sheets and the window cracked open. Every second felt like a decision we couldn't take back. Every touch was heavier than it should have been. Clothes fell to the floor like confessions. His hands knew what they were doing, but his body didn't cooperate. There was a pause, one that stretched too long. He kissed me harder, trying to fix it. But it wasn't working. He couldn't. He pulled away, cursing under his breath. I don't know what's wrong with me. I lay there, breathless, confused. "Maybe it's guilt." "Maybe," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. "Or maybe it's because I wanted it too much." I didn't know what to say. I pulled the blanket around me, suddenly aware of everything. My choices, his frustration, the sunlight cutting across the floor like judgment. He looked back at me. "This didn't happen." "Okay." He nodded. "It didn't." He got dressed quickly. No final words. No lingering look. Just the door opening and closing behind him. I sat there a long time alone, unsure if I was disappointed that it hadn't happened, or relieved. Kara came down an hour later, cheerful and clueless. She didn't notice anything different. She made jokes about how much she'd drunk and how Zane had brought her water in bed. I laughed along with her, my stomach turning with every fake smile. Later, when I left, I didn't say goodbye to him. He didn't come out. And maybe that was for the best. But that night in my apartment, the silence was deafening. I couldn't stop thinking about his hands, his mouth, the look in his eyes right before everything fell apart. It wasn't even the act. It was the attempt, the fact that we were both willing to go there, until something bigger than us got in the way. He wanted it. I did too. And yet it didn't work. I told myself it was over. That the awkward silence would scare him away. That it meant nothing and would fade like a bad memory. But deep down I knew better. Because men don't always walk away from temptation. They circle it, study it, wait for another chance to get it right. And women like me, we wait too. A week passed. A week of pretending. Of ignoring the way my phone stayed quiet. No call from Zane. No awkward message. Just silence, like a stain no one wanted to look at. Kara texted me midweek. "Come over Saturday night. Just us. Need girl time." I didn't want to go. Every part of me screamed no. But I said yes. When I arrived, she greeted me like nothing had changed. She talked fast, moved quickly. Maybe because she knew Zane had been different lately, or maybe because she didn't notice at all. That was the thing about Kara. She lived in motion, never staying still long enough to see what was cracking beneath the surface. He was in the kitchen, back turned, slicing limes. I froze for half a second, but he looked up, gave me a polite nod. That was it. Just a nod. As if my body hadn't been under his hands days ago. As if we were strangers now. Dinner was casual. Drinks were flowing. Kara was on her second margarita when she leaned back and said something that dug right into my ribs. "I don't know what's gotten into him lately," she said with a laugh. "Zane's been extra sweet. And honestly, better in bed too." She laughed like it was a compliment to herself, and I forced a smile, feeling like I might choke on air. Zane didn't look at me. He kept eating, calm and cold. I stared at my plate, gripping the fork like it could anchor me. Later, Kara's cousin called from the airport. Her ride had cancelled and Kara stood up, keys already in hand. "It's just 20 minutes, she said. "You two survive without me." She left in a rush, the door slamming behind her. And just like that, it was me and him. Again. We didn't speak at first. I moved to the sink, rinsing glasses just to keep my hands busy. He came up behind me too close. "You didn't text," I said, not turning around. I didn't know what to say. "You didn't want to say anything." He paused. I didn't stop thinking about it. I turned then, heart pounding. "About what didn't happen?" He stared at me. "About what almost did. And what could've." There was no more pretending. He stepped forward, and this time I didn't move. I should have. But I didn't. He kissed me like he had something to prove. Like the silence between us had been growing sharp. His hands were more certain now, less hesitant. My body remembered him. And this time there were no interruptions. No hesitation. He didn't fumble. Nothing failed. It happened on the same couch Kara had fallen asleep on so many times, barefoot and comfortable. It happened under soft lighting and louder breathing. It happened with her perfume still lingering in the air. And then it was over. He sat back, running a hand through his hair. I curled my knees into my chest, half naked, half numb. Neither of us spoke for a minute. "Did that mean anything to you?" I asked. He didn't look at me. It meant something in the moment. "That's not what I asked." He stood, zipped up, and avoided eye contact. "You already knew the answer." I sat there angry with myself. Angry that I let it happen again. Angry that it felt good. Angry that it wasn't going to stop unless I stopped it. Kara came back 15 minutes later, full of energy and bags of takeout for her cousin. She thanked Zane for staying up and kissed him on the cheek like we hadn't just betrayed her. I watched the way he smiled at her. So casual, so practiced. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. Every movement reminded me of what we'd done. Every creak in the hallway felt like a ghost. In the morning I left without saying goodbye. He didn't stop me. On the drive home I thought about what came next. If there was a next. If I'd do it again. If I hated myself for wanting to. Because now that he'd gotten in. Now that the boundary had shattered. He was in my head even when he wasn't around. And that was the real betrayal. Not what we did. But how I didn't regret it.